Hey guys, welcome back to online learning. This is week 2. Hope you had a nice spring break. Today in this video, I'm going to be talking about the moon and phases of the moon. I'm going to have to split these notes into 2 different videos because it's a little lengthy with information, but I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can with getting the information in there. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Phases, eclipses, and tides. Oh my. Here we go. We're going to do this and talk about the moon, like I said in this video. So taking a look at our very first slide, if it would actually work for me, that'd be great. There we go. Oops, too much. Let's go back. Okay, so the moon. The biggest misconception with the moon, which is going to be played by the role of my wiffle ball here today, is that it produces its own light. It does not. It's not like when you look up in the sky and you see the moon shining, it's because it's got like this little magical core inside of it that is producing light. What the moon is actually doing is reflecting light from the sun, okay? So you can see that I am like half lit. This is my sun over here. So the sun is shining on the moon, and then we actually see the moon because of the light that it's reflecting. And we go through different phases. There's going to be 8 different phases we're going to talk about. And they go through those 8 phases in a month. Yes, there's more than 8 days in a month. You are correct. They stay in some of those phases for a couple days, but we'll talk about that. So depending on where the moon is relative to the Earth, which is going to be played by the role of this volleyball, that is what, depending on what we see, okay, because of its position around Earth. Alrighty, so one thing we also need to talk about before we move on to the phases is that we see the same side of the moon always. So there were movies, I think it was Transformers, like The Dark Side of the Moon, The Far Side of the Moon, or there's songs about it. It's true. There is a side of the moon that we have never seen. The only people who have actually seen it is astronauts. So if you want to see the backside of the moon, then you need to get into the space program at NASA. Give your old 8th grade science teacher a call because she would love to come visit you. That's awesome. Okay, but the same side of the moon is always facing us because the moon's rotation is the same length as the moon's revolution. So remember, a rotation spinning on its axis, revolution is when it goes around something. So the moon is going to spin on its axis the same time it revolves, the exact same time. So you can see in this video here, not this video, this picture, we only see one side of the moon. So what that would look like if I were the moon, so a rotation, at some point, you're going to have to see my back. So what the moon does is as it revolves, if this is Earth and I'm the moon, as it revolves, it rotates. So you can see as I go around the ball, oh, there's my back. Okay, so as it revolves, it rotates. So I just made a complete rotation. You saw the side of me, you saw the back of me, and you saw the other side of me. But I also did it while I was making my revolution. So that is why we see the same side of the moon. So the phases. These are showing you pictures of the phases. We're going to talk about them next. Obviously, again, there are more than 8 pictures here, but there are only 8 phases, and it takes it 29.5 days to go through these phases. So it is possible for you to have 2 full moons in 1 month. Not very, excuse me, often, but it is possible because the revolution period is a little bit less than a full month for us, especially those months that have 31 days. Obviously, that's more than 29.5 days. So it's possible that you can start off a month with a full moon if we get into that spot in the revolution. And then it's possible you can have another one at the end of the month because of that 29.5 day cycle. Okay, so let's talk about these phases. Let's get into it. So the way that this happens is the moon is going to move around. Okay, so let me move. Okay, so what is happening is here's your moon, your sun's over here with the Green Bay Packers light, in addition to other lights. Okay, but sun is over there. So what happens is it's going to start with a new moon. So notice that half of the moon, no matter where it is, half of the moon as it goes around the Earth is always going to be lit. This side facing the sun is always going to be lit. Okay, The back side, away from the sun, isn't going to be lit. So that's why we see different phases. The new moon is when the moon is in between the earth and the sun. So notice that the new moon, we see the shadow. So it's not going to show us anything. And then as we move around, the light starts to come on the right side. Then we'll move to half is lit and half is not. Then it gets bigger until we get to the full moon. So the full moon is when the moon is behind the earth. It goes sun, earth, moon. And now we see the completely lit side. The dark side is over here. But then the light starts to go away. So we're starting to get a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker until we go back to the new moon phase. Okay? So let's talk specifically about these phases. So here's what it's showing you. So here's the sun over here. And this is showing you, this inner circle is showing you that half of the moon is always going to be lit. Half of that moon always lit. We may not see the whole lit side. We are only going to see part of it. The only time we see the whole lit side is during the full moon. Okay, so we start with the new moon, and that is when the moon is in between the sun and the earth. So the side that's lit is the side that's away from us. So see here in this picture, here's the earth, and here is the darker side, because this is the side that's being lit. So this is when we don't see the moon. Then we go into waxing crescent. So it's moved a little bit, so the light is starting to come on. And that is called waxing. When light is on the right side, it's waxing. So notice here you have waxing, and here you have waxing. Light is on the right for waxing. Okay? Then you can see here, we see exactly half. This is what we see from Earth. Boop, and that makes sense because look at this. Half of the moon is lit, and that's what we see from Earth, this side. Okay? So that's what we see from Earth. Then it gets a little bit more lit. That's called a gibbous. When it is less than halfway lit, it's the crescent stage. When it is more than halfway lit, it is the gibbous stage. So then finally, bye-bye shadow completely. And this is when we are staring at the full moon. Completely lit, okay? Now, when the light starts to go off, and it's now on the left side, so the light was on the right side up here, now it's on the side, that's called waning. So you're going to wane off, wax on, wane off. So again, you have a gibbous, because more than half the moon is lit here. Then you go into your third quarter. Go away, little thing. Sorry about that. Then you go into your third quarter moon. Notice the difference between first quarter and third quarter. When it's first quarter, we see the right side of the moon lit. When it's third quarter, we see the left side of the moon lit. Okay, first quarter is also known as last quarter. I'm sorry, third quarter is also known as last quarter. Then you go to your waning crescent. The light is on the left still, but it's almost gone. So the light is almost gone. We're almost back to that new moon stage where the moon is between us and the sun, and we don't see it, okay, because the other side of the moon is lit. So this is why we see our different phases, is because as the moon revolves around Earth, different amount of light, okay, is light. Well, we see different amounts of light. Half the moon is always lit, but what we see, whoops, my moon just fell. What we see from Earth depends on our angle with the moon. Okay, so we're not always going to see it all the way lit, but half of it is always lit. All right, and then I don't want to get into eclipses yet. Okay, so that is just the important takeaways from this is going to be, again, waxing is when the light is on the right. Waning is when the light is on the left. Half of the moon is lit at all times. It doesn't fully look lit to us because of the position of the moon compared to the Earth. And then we always see the same side of the moon. Okay? So that's it for phases. I'm going to do another video for eclipses and tides. So get prepared for that. See you in a little bit.